All right, welcome to Husker Storm Blog. Last video I looked at the Capital One Bowl, disappointing bowl game. Now we're going to look back at Nebraska's first year in the Big Ten and a little bit of what's to come. I didn't get to that in my last video. It took a little long talking about the Capital One Bowl, but this year in the first year in the Big Ten was definitely disappointing. I felt like the hype surrounding Nebraska was a little much, considering they had 11 new opponents on their schedule and a lot to work in their secondary. You know, I thought Bo was going to be able to throw in Keontae Evans and replace Prince Amukamara. I mean, not completely replace him, but I thought he was going to be able to do a good job of replacing those, and obviously he didn't. And his recruiting class was good last year. This year it's not that great, and he's only got 9 commits, and we're in January already. So he's got to step up his game because his seat's going to be getting hot if he has another 4-loss year. You know, I like Bo. I liked him straight from the get-go, and I've always liked him. He's a hard-nosed guy. He wants his team to play disciplined, but they don't. Let's face it, Nebraska's lost versus Wisconsin, Michigan, Northwestern, and South Carolina because of turnovers and penalties. They lost. It's simple as that. It's not because they weren't the better team. Now Wisconsin's better than Nebraska, and Michigan I think is slightly better than Nebraska. Northwestern's not even close, okay? But they lost because they didn't execute in 3 different aspects of the game. Penalties versus Wisconsin, they had 9 penalties and 3 turnovers. Northwestern, they had 6 penalties. Okay, that's not that much, but they had 6. Northwestern only had 2. The referees aren't out to get us, okay? This isn't the Big 12 anymore. This is a Nebraska team that is highly penalized. Now, there are always questionable penalties, but Nebraska is highly penalized, and we need to face it as Husker fans. 2 turnovers, both of them in the red zone versus Northwestern. And if you look at the Michigan game, you had 3 turnovers, 8 penalties. 3 of those turnovers, all of those fumbles came within the 30. You had a roughing the kicker that gave them a first down and allowed them to score. They had a fake field goal that they scored on a touchdown. They had a blocked punt. You can't give good teams opportunities. Versus South Carolina, they had 2 turnovers, all within the 25 of South Carolina's, a missed field goal, and 10 penalties. And this is a typical Bo Pelini loss. It's just how it happens. They always lose like that. Now, in all their losses, they struggled greatly in third down efficiency. 3 for 13 against Michigan. Michigan was 8 for 18. They had so much more plays than Nebraska. I mean, the time of possession was ridiculous because the special teams was terrible, and Tim Beck couldn't dial up a play on third downs. Against Northwestern, we did a pretty good job on third downs, 10 for 17. But guess what? Northwestern was 7 for 12. And they converted 2 fourth downs. Come on, guys, let's go. Wisconsin, 8 for 12. Nebraska, 5 for 12. All right. South Carolina, that was a good game in terms of stopping them on third downs. They were 4 for 13. We were 3 for 13. But they converted 3 fourth downs. And that's what matters right there. And Nebraska had games that were, well, it was, wow, this Nebraska team's got a lot of talent. If they can put it together, they can be really good. In Michigan State, they beat them by 21 points. That's a team that played in the Big Ten Championship, won their bowl game versus Georgia, barely lost to Wisconsin. It's a good team. You scored 24 points on that defense, and you shut down that offense. And then the next week, you play terrible versus Northwestern, and you couldn't get a running game going because Bonnie Carton doesn't even know how to freaking tell his offensive line what to block. What are we playing, a zone blocking scheme or a run blocking scheme? Huh, Barney, what are we playing? Come on. Got to get your team ready week in, week out. It happens every year. Nebraska falls to an unranked opponent at home that they're superior to. They're the best team on the field on that day, but they lose. Texas last year, Iowa State the year before. It's unacceptable stuff, you know. Um, in the chat. Okay, so you started off the year. You played at FCS school. The offense, they started off slow. They beat Fresno State. The defense struggled without Alfonso Denard. The next week against Washington, the defense struggled, but the offense looked really good, scoring 51 against a very bad defense. Wyoming, you went on the road. You beat Wyoming, took care of business, and then you got your first game against the Big Ten. Wisconsin in Camp Randall, the best team in the Big Ten, no question about it. Well, you're playing well. You're up 14-7 going in the second quarter, and then Tim Beck decides, let's drop back and pass it 15 times in a row. We passed the ball more than Wisconsin in that game. That's why we lost. Do I think Wisconsin's that much better than us? Do I think they're 31 points better than us? No way. Not a chance. All right? Do I think they're better than us? Yes, they're better than us. They're more talented on offense. But we should have been in that game. The Ohio State game, the defense looked terrible in the first half. Then, they kind of slowed them a little bit. Braxton Miller got injured at the end, which really helped. But the offense looked spectacular in a comeback. Taylor Martinez led the team back. Rex Burkhead was the MVP, no question about it. Then you got an easy game versus Minnesota, and you beat the tar out of them. You played well against a dual-threat quarterback for the first time in all year. Then you get Michigan State. Okay, you got a pocket passer, a run game that's struggling, 2 really good wide receivers, and you shut them down. That was right there. I was like, wow, this team might be able to get 10 wins, 11 wins this year. And then the next week, you show up in the first half defensively, you held Northwestern to 7 points, which I'm pretty sure there's no other team that had done that this year. And then you decided not to show up offensively, especially the offensive line. Taylor Martinez had a great day passing the ball, but his day was not good enough because the defense couldn't get a freaking stop, and Northwestern had like a 10-minute drive in the fourth quarter. Penn State, tough circumstances, a grinded out win against a good defensive team. And the next week, you got a huge game. This game right here gets you to BCS Bowl with the win. All right, you come out a little slow on offense. Going to halftime, Michigan's up. They're up 17-13, 17-10. And Nebraska was a little sluggish, and then it's 24-10, and it went downhill from there. Nebraska gave the ball to Michigan on special teams. Fumble by Taylor Martinez because the offensive line doesn't know how to pass block. Third down efficiency was terrible. Michigan is not. They're not. What was that score? 28 points better than you. Seriously, Michigan's not that much better than you. And Nebraska and Michigan are about at the same level. But you can't give good teams opportunities, especially when you don't have a shutdown defense. And then the next week you're playing Iowa. Solid offense. Vandenberg's an underrated quarterback. Marcus Coker, one of the best running backs in the Big Ten. And you shut him down. You win 20-7. The offense looked decent, not great. If you look at all the last games, besides Northwestern game, Nebraska didn't score. There's 2 games in the Big Ten where they scored more than 30 points. South Carolina. That I already talked about that game. I don't want to talk about that game anymore. But if you look at the offense, if you look at it, I like what Tim Beck has done in his first year. Now there's a lot of question marks in play calling and stuff like that. I understand, but he did a good job. He did better than Sean Watson. There was one thing that Sean Watson did better than Tim Beck. He knew how to get his playmakers in space. He dialed up plays that got them in space and created huge plays. But he couldn't get consistency with his offense. Now, Tim Beck, he has that consistency, but Nebraska only home run threat is off play action passes. They can't seem to get Taylor Martinez in space. Now, credit, the Big Ten is much better defensively than the Big 12. But Rex Burkhead's not a home run threat. He's a great running back. He's better than Roy Halou. But he's not the home run threat like Roy Halou. They got to develop one of those other backs. Amir Abdullah, Aaron Green, Braylon Hurd should have been redshirted this year. There's no question about them. They should have been redshirted. One of them should have been redshirted. Come on. If not two of them. Jamal Turner, he should have been redshirted. You can't let star athletes sit on the sidelines and not be able to play. Now those kids wasted their freshman year when they should have been using it. Because when Jamal Turner was on the field, he was lights out. Now, I know he wasn't practicing well, and I understand why you don't play him for that. But, I mean, those kids would understand if they get redshirted. It's for the better. They're going to get more playing time their freshman year. So definitely one of those guys is going to have to step up next year. No question about that. Defensively, this whole cover two, man up, let those guys play press tight and rely on the defensive line to get pressure doesn't work because you face South Carolina and that offensive line's really bad. You couldn't get any pressure at all. Now, you did have 4 sacks, but a lot of that came off of, scrambling and, he didn't get it. Most of that came in the first half. This whole cover 2 scheme is not going to work with Austin Cassidy at safety. And, Aaron Green as your second cornerback. They're going to have to play more zone. They're going to have to get away from this man coverage. It's just not going to work unless you got stars out wide and great defensive linemen like Ndamukong Suh and Jared Crick. Let's face it. Let's just face it. Baker Steinkuhler is not Jared Crick or Ndamukong Suh. And Cameron Meredith, he needs to step up in his pass rush. Nebraska needs to get better defensive linemen. That if he wants this whole scheme to work, he's got to get better defensive linemen. Now, credit Bo. It was a tough year, injuries and everything. 9-4 is unacceptable, but considering the circumstances, it's not something I'm gonna ask for him to be fired over. If he does it again next year, he's got 2 years for me. Okay, that's how much years Bo Pelini's got. 2 years. 2013, he's got the easiest schedule. He switches Ohio State and Wisconsin with Illinois and Purdue. Okay, that's going to be a much easier schedule unless those teams turn into powerhouses. You should be able to get 10 wins and get your team to BCS Bowl. So he's got 2 years to get his team to BCS Bowl. He's going to have his best offense next year he's ever had at Nebraska. Taylor Martinez is your quarterback, whether you like it or not, Nebraska fans. It's not just him. And he's gonna have a great offense next year, and there's no reason they shouldn't be scoring 35 points a game at least. And they can't continue this, show up in the first quarter and a half scoring points, and then you just get down on yourself and you don't score for the rest of the game like South Carolina, Wisconsin, and Michigan game. Stuff like that can't happen. But next year, I expect it to be better. The defense is, the defensive line should be better. Linebackers, big question. It's going to be a question to see how Zaire Anderson and Sase, the JUCO, the two of the JUCOs, the JUCO cornerback, if he can step up and play well. But Bo Pelini's going to have to really work on this defense. Hopefully Pavuchis can put something together defensively next year. You played those teams. Again, you've already played them. You start off a tough game. Started off. Southern Miss was Conference USA champs. They lose a lot of players. Then you go to Pasadena. I think next year's going to be better. We should get 10 wins. And if we fall again to a Northwestern or an unranked team at home, like potentially Penn State, it's going to be disappointing. I'm going to be really mad. And there's no reason we shouldn't be able to be playing Michigan for the right to play in the Big Ten championship game versus Wisconsin, probably, because Ohio State can't. 2 losses next year is what I expect from Pelini next year. I wouldn't be surprised if we do go 9-3, a typical year for Pelini. But a 4-loss year next year is going to put Pelini's seat hot. Definitely, the first year in the Big Ten was a struggle, but the offense improved, I believe. They just got to find the big play threat. And defensively, there's a lot of question marks going into next year, but when they do face the typical Big Ten pounding down your throat pocket passer, they shut them down. But next year they're going to have to find a way to stop Denard Robinson. So check back for more videos.